All-American half pound of sweet pure beef patty, lettuce, tomato.
Singles going steady.
This is Singles Going Steady, the Paisley podcast dedicated to exploring great singles with a particular eye to the punk, new wave, and DIY eras of the last century. I'm Adrienne Paisley Meddock.
I'm Steve from Glasgow near Paisley, McGowan. We are in a band, the Beef People, that released a single that was not Paisley in 1986 on our own label, Zublet Records. But we are record collectors and passionate especially about the expression of pop music perfection that is the single recording. Exploring the mystery of what makes for a great single is what propelled us to begin this podcast.
And if you haven't guessed, we're going Paisley with a great single today in episode, what is this,
055.
055. And we're looking at Paisley Underground, Progenitor, the 3 O'Clock, and the great single, Jet Fighter.
Yes. The 3 O'Clock are a Los Angeles, California-based band led by
Michael Quercio.
And he is credited with coining the phrase Paisley Underground, which in the early 80s, there were a number of bands that fit that mold. The 3 O'Clock was the best one.
So they really owed a lot to the psychedelic movement of the late 60s,
Right.
maybe think Birds.
Right.
Especially Birds.
Yeah.
But, others of that ilk. And, did wonderful things by infusing sort of the energy of the post-punk movement with those roots of that jangly Rickenbacker-led sound.
Yes, and the other bands that you think of when you think of the Paisley Underground include the Bangles, the
Rain Parade,
the Dream Syndicate, Green on Red, the Long Riders, and there are a few others as well. But we're big fans of the 3 O'Clock.
Yeah, so this, the jangle pop, jangle movement of the Southeast.
Right.
This is the iteration that came out of Southern California.
Right, I agree. And so let's go ahead and listen to this single. It was released in 1983 on Frontier Records, produced by Earl Mankey.
Their album was. I don't know that it was released in the U.S. as a single, was it?
That's true, yes. The single was only available in France, I think.
On Lolita, right?
Yes, on Lolita Records. That's right. I'm sorry, I missed that. It is on the album 16 Tambourines, but it was a single en français.
So we get to talk about it, right?
Right.
We're talking about singles.
We'll do anything to talk about a good song.
Sangle.
And so it's the 3 O'Clock, 1983. The song is called Jet Fighter. Jet Fighter Man, here they go.
Fly
Okay, that's just the sound of exuberance. That was wonderful song, sing-alongable.
Yes.
And, also that jet fighter notion, this early 80s Reagan era, almost poking fun of that sort of
military complex.
Military complex, which, that was definitely, got a post Nicaragua,
Right.
post Grenada.
Right, Grenada was
there
happening.
really was not. The military was dwindling. The U.S. military was dwindling. It was the waning days of the Cold War. So this really had, the notion of being a jet fighter man was very nostalgic.
Yes, I agree. I love his voice. He's got such a unique voice.
Great bass player too.
Yes, and the song is immensely catchy. It has that riff in it that's basically like a G scale, a major scale. It's just perfect. It kind of reminds me in a way of an early XTC song.
Yeah, I can hear that now.
I hadn't thought about that before, but it's got some of those almost sharp angles.
Yeah,
but it's all smoothed out and along the whole song.
The angles are underneath there. You've got a nice Paisley drop cloth over those sharp angles.
Yes, so you don't hurt yourself. This was released on Frontier Records, which was an independent label in Los Angeles. Produced by Earl Mankey, who we discussed in an earlier podcast. He was a member of the initial version of Sparks and had been a producer around town. He's produced a number of bands.
Meaning L.A.
Yes.
Right.
And also put out some of his solo stuff, which we may talk about in future podcasts. It's a great sounding record.
Yeah, it's wonderful sound.
Yeah.
The whole album is great, 16 tambourines.
Yes, indeed.
And, I can remember putting this on, and that was the... Can you imagine having that as your first track on your debut album?
Yeah, it just blows your head off.
It was just like, who is this? What is happening?
Right.
This is
Why haven't
amazing.
I heard this? Yes.
Right.
Yes, I agree. Talk about front loaded, but the whole record is very strong.
It stands up. But it's definitely like a cherry bomb to start off, like a sugar bomb.
Yes.
A Paisley bomb.
Now, recently, very recently, this past Record Store Day.
I think the Black Friday even,
not
the April one,
right,
but
yes.
but the Friday after Thanksgiving.
There was a record released called 3x4 with 4 of the
Paisley Underground
bands
champions
covering each other's songs. And the 3 o'clock are on there.
So the 4 bands, each 3 songs from the other 3 out of the 4.
And so the Bangles get to do Jet Fighter by the 3 o'clock, and we're going to listen to some of it now. It's quite charming.
It is.
Here they are, the Bangles from 2018, from the 3x4 soundtrack that was released for
Record Store Day on Yep Rock.
Yeah, not a soundtrack, but a compilation.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks. Here we go.
Jet fighter man, that's what I am, 'cause tanks go too slow.
So there's a cover, and we like to talk about who we could imagine covering the song. So we already have a cover, but who would you like to hear cover Jet Fighter?
Well, I had mentioned it sounded kind of like XTC, but I would like to hear their alter egos, the Dukes of Stratosphere, that do the songs that sound like old 60s songs. If the Dukes covered Jet Fighter, it would be authentically 60s style.
Well, I'd like to hear two versions. I'd like to hear them play it as they would imagine XTC playing it,
Right.
and then hear their version as the Dukes, and see how they make that distinction in their minds.
Yep.
But I guess for my recommendation, my real recommendation would to have been to have heard Prince play it.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Particularly that sort of raspberry beret era,
Yes,
Prince
the
of the
psychedelic.
Revolution, and certainly he had that very strong. Well, Paisley Park is the name of his label, and his studio and his compound.
Right.
And he later signed the 3 o'clock.
Yeah. They went on after this record. They signed to IRS Records. They moved up to the big leagues, and they put out 3 or 4 records, I believe. The first one was called Arrive Without Traveling, and had a minor hit on it called Her Head's Revolving, which is an excellent song. But later, towards the end of the period, they did go record at Paisley Park. Prince was a big fan. And the last record, Vermilion, he actually contributed a song uncredited. So that's a pretty big fan. Yeah. And he helped with the recording. So he really did like the 3 o'clock. And that's pretty high praise.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
You have any recommendations?
My recommendation today, we had the pleasure yesterday of going to Hillsborough and in North Carolina. And
Hillsborough is a super happening town, guys.
The second time we've eaten at this Mexican restaurant is called Ixtapa. And we'll link to it. The food there is amazing. Speaking of Southern California, I had the fish tacos, and they weren't the fried fish. They were regular fish. They put some kind of spice on it that's just sublime, and it had the corn and the purple cabbage. Absolutely the best fish tacos I've ever had. They were amazing. They were not expensive, super good, super filling.
It's a family-run restaurant.
I can't recommend this place high enough. You should, if you're in the area, you should make a trip there.
Yes.
Yeah, and you got the tamales, right?
Oh yeah, they're doing tamale special.
They were as big as your head. I mean,
there's a tamale at home waiting for me.
Yeah, and super delicious, super delicious. So, what's your recommendation?
So, my recommendation, since we've got this new iteration of Paisley Underground coming back with a recent recording, basically not just at the month mark for its release.
And let's remember the 3 o'clock have reformed, and they're still playing in Southern California. The Bangles are still happening.
Right.
The Dream Syndicate is doing really well. In fact, they're playing a gig with our buddies in the Peter Holsapple combo.
Oh yeah.
So like we'd said before, some of these so-called old folks bands, they're still rocking, still putting out good stuff. And I totally interrupted your recommendation. I'm sorry.
But that tag team. Which my recommendation is to, we've recommended a version of this before, is patronizing your local record stores.
Yes.
I'm a little crowd phobic, just a little. So often, if you can't get there on the record store day release dates, there may be some copies that are still hanging around.
Right.
So don't think just because you weren't there on record store day proper or on Black Friday record store day that you've lost out. Go check to see. I know Bull City Records has a special bin with all the record store day products, so you go through and see what's there.
So does Horizon in Greenville.
Right. So here's those special releases, and of course they try to specialize, meaning the labels, as part of the RSD deal is having limited release, super exciting things that will propel you to go into the store on those days.
Right.
But if you're lucky, the thing that you're interested in, there may be a copy or two that you can still pick up.
That's right. So, again, support your local music store.
Every day is record store day.
Yes, indeed.
It is if you do it right.
I'm hoping we'll get to go to a record store after we're done here. I hope I play my cards right. So that's our show for today. Singles Going Steady 055. The 3 o'clock, the vanguard of the Paisley Underground in L.A. Amazing song called Jet Fighter Man. And until the next time, you have a Paisley day.
And may the Reds go ha.
To learn more about the artists and recordings we just talked about, visit our website at zubrecords.com and click on the Singles Going Steady icon.
You'll also find links to the persons, places, and things we recommend, and much more.
You can find episodes of Singles Going Steady on our website or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Singles Going Steady is brought to you by the power and majesty of Zub Records. Zub Records. Smart sounds for sharp people.
Today